We'd like to welcome all you guys at Forest Lake Technology Magnet School. That's in Columbia, South Carolina. So understand that's the hometown of our NASA administrator, General Charlie Bolden. So we're pretty excited to have you guys here. And as Michael said, I'm sitting with veteran flight director Chris Edelin, and Chris knows quite a lot about what happens in this room and also what happens up on the International Space Station. This is the nerve center for human spaceflight for NASA, the Mission Control Center. So we're very excited to have you guys here, Chris and I, and we're ready to take y'all's questions.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and my question is, what is the primary job of a flight director?
Okay, well, thank you, Sophia, and let me first also say welcome to Mission Control to Forest Lake Elementary, and I'll be glad to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to work here in Mission Control and also some of the other exciting things that NASA is doing in space. But first, we'll talk about the flight director job. Essentially, the flight director is responsible for two things. One, keeping the astronauts safe while they're in space, and number two, ensuring the success of the mission. So we don't do this by ourselves. Obviously, we have a team of people that help us in this job, and that's the room that we're in right now. We're in Mission Control, and right now the people in this room are controlling the International Space Station. The space station's 250 miles up in space in orbit around the Earth. There are 6 cosmonauts and astronauts on board the space station right now, and so in this room there are about 15 people. They're flight controllers. Each one is responsible for a particular system on board the space station. For example, the life support system, the communication gear, the power systems. And of course, we picked a bad time to show the entire room because right now is evidently is a bit of a break in the communication. So some of the folks have stepped off console. But you see, the people here are monitoring the onboard systems on the space station. They're planning the crew's activities. And in the middle of the room there on the left of your screen is Bob Dempsey. That's the flight director. He's in charge right now. So he takes all the recommendations, all the inputs from these flight controllers, and he makes the final decision about what plan they're going to execute, what they're going to do. And if anything goes wrong, then it's up to the specialists at their computers here to monitor the data from the space station to figure out what we should do to fix the problem. Then they'll tell the flight director, and he'll make the final decision what course of action we'll take to fix the problem. Of course, we work very closely with the astronauts, and we communicate with them to tell them what they need to do as well to stay safe and to keep the mission successful.
And of course, that's your seat. That's Chris's seat where you saw him showing you where Bob sits. So Chris doesn't normally sit here, but he's here helping me answer y'all's questions because he knows he's the expert on the human spaceflight. Next question, great question.
My name is Isabel, and my question is, what is the scariest moment you've experienced in Mission Control?
Well, probably the scariest moment was back in 2010 when I was flight director for the International Space Station on a quiet Saturday shift. Towards the end of the shift, the crew was getting ready to go to bed. And then, just like in a Hollywood movie, all the alarms started going off. So our caution and warning display goes yellow and red, and there's tones going off. And it was a failure of one of our 2 external cooling pumps. So these pumps move liquid ammonia around the outside of the space station to keep the modules that the astronauts live in cool and to cool off our electronics so they don't overheat. So one of those 2 pumps failed. It had never happened before, but it was something that we had practiced before in simulations. So suddenly I found myself with a small team on the weekend having to deal with that problem. So over the next several hours, we safed all the systems and made sure that the space station could handle that loss of 50% of our cooling. And then over the next few weeks, additional teams and other flight directors helped out, and the astronauts actually had to do 3 spacewalks to replace that failed pump.
And one thing to take note of what Chris just said, if you didn't catch that happened on a Saturday. Just to remind you, the folks in this room are here on 3 shifts around the clock every day of the year. So it's important to know that the crew up on the International Space Station is being watched over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Great question.
Hello, my name is Jackson. My question is, what do you worry about most during takeoff or re-entry of a space vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I think for myself as a flight director, or frankly, an astronaut or any flight controller here, the thing we worry about during launch is are the engines going to work? And on landing, is the heat shield going to work? So on landing, the temperatures can get up to 3,000 degrees as the spacecraft slows from traveling 5 miles a second down to zero velocity within about an hour. So you're talking extreme release of energy, and that's in the form of heat. So the heat shield has to work for landing. The astronauts nowadays come back on Russian Soyuz capsules. They land under parachutes, so that's another thing we worry about, are the parachutes going to work? But spaceflight is very dangerous. There's lots to worry about. We have no shortage of things to keep track of here, so that's why we really emphasize preparation and training to make sure that we're ready, no matter what happens, that we're ready to respond.
Hello, my name is Cyrus, and my question is, what shuttle mission have you supported?
Okay, thank you for that question as well. I've been here for 25 years, so I've supported over 40 shuttle missions, and I'm up to about 24 space station missions so far. And they've all been, they've all had their own unique challenges and rewards. The one that probably stands out in my mind the most would be STS-99, which was the Shuttle Radar Topography mission. And that's a lot of big words, but it was essentially a radar mapping mission. We helped to make a map of the entire world. And what was special about this map was that it included elevation data. That's what the radar gave us, was the height information that could be used for maps. And so this mission took place back in the year 2000, but my role was not as flight director. Back then I was a flight dynamics officer, so I was in charge of the trajectory or flight path of that mission. So it took about 3 years to plan how we would direct the flight path of the shuttle such that the radar data would allow this highly accurate map. And what was rewarding about it was to plan something for years and then to actually go and execute it and make it happen. And it was extremely successful. That mapping data is used for geology, for aerial navigation, for even for things such as situating cell phone towers and figuring out what the coverage is going to be based on the terrain and the area of the tower. So it's just one example. That's just one of many 135 shuttle missions that improved science and improved life here on Earth. And I was honored to be a part of that mission, and nowadays that radar is actually hanging in the ceiling of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C.
Hello, my name is Alina. My question is, what were your feelings when you directed your first space shuttle mission?
Well, mainly it was a feeling of gratitude. I supported as a flight dynamics officer for many years before I was selected to be a flight director in 2007. So I was part of the team of highly trained specialists, that you saw here on camera. And so when you get to pick to be a leader of such a fine team, it really is it's humbling, and it's an honor. And I just felt very fortunate to be able to do that, because it really is a lot of fun to work with people and to pull together a complex mission plan. And you get to work with the astronauts and the trainers. And again, we don't do this overnight. It takes many months, or in some cases years, to develop a mission plan. And to be the flight director, you play a very large role in pulling that plan together and then executing that. So it's a lot of fun.
Alan, we're going to go with you next.
My name is Alan McDuffie, and my question is, what is Orion's mission?
Okay, let's see, I believe your name was Alan, so I'm glad you asked about Orion. We have a test flight coming up of the Orion spacecraft in December this year. It's going to be an unmanned flight. It's the first test flight of this capsule, and you can see the Orion spacecraft itself is the capsule on the far right, and the stuff to the left includes its booster engine, its rocket engine that's going to take it up to 3,600 miles up in space, way above the space station's orbit. The space station's down at about 250 miles. So it's going to take it way up high, and then it's going to dive towards the Earth's atmosphere and test its heat shield, which is the blunt end that you see on the capsule after it separates. And it's going to make sure that the heat shield works. It's going to make sure that all the navigation systems work, and the control systems. And it's again, it's going to be without any astronauts, because we need to make sure everything works before we put people inside it. But we're very excited about this mission at NASA, because Orion is it's not really the replacement for the space shuttle because it's going to do different things. The space shuttle hauled payloads, cargo, satellites, and people up into low Earth orbit. It can only go up to about 300 miles. But the Orion will have the capability to fly for many months at distances very far from the Earth, even out to visit an asteroid or to go to the Moon or Mars. So we're really looking forward to putting Orion through its first test flight in December.
And just to add, one of Chris's colleagues is actually training just about every day now. I'm probably getting ready for that flight. But you see this flight control room for the International Space Station. We also have some flight control rooms in this building down the hall from here where the space shuttle was controlled. There's also a room from which the Orion is going to be controlled after it is launched from the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station down in Florida. So one of Chris's colleagues is heavy duty training right now for that Orion mission that Chris just described for you. Great question.
Hello, my name is Jeremiah Scruggs, and what are you working on to prepare for the Orion missions?
Okay, yep, that's a good follow-up, Kiera. Again, the lead flight director in charge of Orion is Mike Serafin, and I'm a little bit bummed that I don't get to take part in Orion, but that's not my job to do right now. I'm a flight director mainly concentrating on International Space Station as well as the Dragon mission from the SpaceX, the Dragon cargo vehicle that just came to the space station a couple weeks ago. So unfortunately, I don't get to have the fun with the team that's doing the new vehicle, but they have similar challenges that we have here on the space station team, where they're developing a flight plan. They're inventing new procedures, things that they need to do to operate that spacecraft. They're figuring out when they'll have communication with the spacecraft and what commands or what instructions need to be sent from the ground up to the spacecraft, and they're making sure that they're trained and ready to go, and they're thinking about what can go wrong and what are they going to do about those possible failure scenarios to try to ensure maximum mission success for this test flight.
Next.
My name is Jada, and what is it like to control or be responsible for a space shuttle mission?
So what's it like to control a space shuttle mission? Was that the question?
Yes, sir, that was the question.
Okay, so it's as you can expect, it's pretty stressful. It can be stressful at times. There's a lot to keep track of, but the way that we handle the stress and the complexity is through preparation and training. So we, as I described earlier, we spend many months, or in some cases years, preparing for a space mission, not only thinking of what the plan is that we intend to execute, but what can go wrong and what we would need to do in response to that. So, and we actually practice in what's called simulators. That's where we flow data that's generated by a computer, but our displays and screens look normal, and looks like normal in-flight data to us. So we have a practice room which looks similar to this one, and I will practice with flight controllers, and I'll rehearse my role as the flight director in charge of the team, and we'll even do this with astronauts that are in another building in a space station simulator, or soon to be an Orion simulator as well. And we'll practice all those steps together to make sure that we're ready when it comes time to actually fly the mission.
Hello, my name is Haru, and my question is, do you get nervous every time you control a space shuttle or a space station mission?
That's a great question, Haru. Short answer is no. I don't get nervous every time, but I will admit sometimes you feel a little bit of butterflies if you have especially a really difficult or challenging shift coming up. For example, during the rendezvous of the Dragon mission that we did a couple weeks ago, that definitely gets your attention. Or if you're getting ready to oversee a spacewalk or a launch or a landing, those are times when the stress levels go up dramatically, for not only for us but for our entire team and the astronauts. And again, the way that we combat that, I'll give you a little NASA secret. The way we do that is just what I talked about before. We deal with the butterflies through preparation. We make sure that we're ready to go, and we practice and we plan and we train. And you guys can use the same technique. If you ever get nervous before a big test, or before a concert or a play, the way you can combat that combat those butterflies is to make sure that you're prepared, that you've studied, you've learned your parts, and then that'll maximize your chances of success as well.
It's interesting that you asked that question, because right now, in the last couple of hours on the space station, the crew, even though 3 of them have been there for quite a number of days so far, 3 additional crew members just arrived 2 weeks ago, and this morning they spent about 2 hours conducting an onboard training exercise where they went through emergency drills. They went through their own fire drill, just like you guys would at your school. The crew members did that on the space station this morning, and they did that with the help and interaction with this flight control team and a flight control team in Russia and other flight control teams that support space stations. So you're never too old to be ready for any kind of an emergency, or as Chris said, preparation for the mission itself. So that was a great question and good timing for what's going on the space station this morning.
My name is Kyle. My question is are you excited to help with the Orion mission?
Thank you, Kyle. I would be
That's
excited
a great name,
if
by the way.
I would be excited if I was working it, but I'm not involved with Orion, but I am excited to see it fly. I am looking forward to seeing it go. I think everybody here at NASA is really looking forward to it, because the shuttle was retired back in 2011, so we've been waiting for an American capability to launch Americans into space. Right now, Americans fly into space on a Russian spacecraft, the Soyuz spacecraft, and so NASA's working on the Orion to give us American capability to get into space and to go beyond low Earth orbit on other missions. And also there are 2 private companies, Boeing and SpaceX, are both working on commercially provided launch vehicles and spacecraft that will shuttle astronauts back and forth to the International Space Station. So there's a lot of really cool things going on in NASA, and a lot of things to look forward to over the next couple of years.
My name is Joseph, and my question is, have you ever worked the space shuttle mission that something really bad happened?
No, fortunately not. As a flight director and as a flight dynamics officers, all of my missions were successful. I was not on console during the Columbia accident or the Challenger accident.
Hi, my name is Dylan, and my question is, did you follow Curiosity's landing on Mars? How scary do you think it was during the 7 minutes of terror for the flight controllers of Curiosity before it landed on the surface of the planet?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably like you guys, I follow Curiosity quite a bit, and I remember watching the landing, and I remember having a lot of sympathy for the. I'm sure that they were sweating bullets there at the Jet Propulsion Lab, or JPL, out in Los Angeles, when their spacecraft was going through I believe the 7 minutes of terror that you mentioned there, on re-entry onto Mars, because they had spent so many years preparing for that mission and building it, and it was all coming down to that critical mission phase of successful landing. But they were successful. The Curiosity is doing a great job. It's been on Mars now for about a little over 2 years. The rover has just arrived at Mount Sharp, so it's going to give them a lot of opportunities now to study the geology of Mars, because on that mountain different levels of rocks are exposed, so it'll be different. It'll give them the ability to sample from different eras, different times in the past, and different types of rocks. And they've got cameras, and they've got I'm going to give you a big word that you can ask your teacher about, a mass spectrometer that actually allows them to analyze the chemical composition of the rocks, so they can understand more about the history of Mars. And the big mystery with Mars is there's evidence that there used to be liquid water, but that doesn't make sense because it's too far from the sun for liquid water to exist. So we don't know why the climate changed on Mars. We don't know why there used to be liquid water, but now, where's all the water gone? Is it locked up in the ground, or did it escape into space? So there's a lot to be learned on Mars that will help us better understand the Earth's environment and climate. And plus, it's just really cool seeing pictures from Mars. Don't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My name is Emma. What was your favorite space shuttle or space station mission to be flight director on?
Yeah, my favorite space station mission as flight director was Expedition 34, and that one flew from November of 2012 to March of 2013. So it was a little over a year and a half ago. And what made that special for me was I was the lead flight director for that mission. So I was not sitting here in mission control, during that mission, but rather I was overseeing all the teams that were operating the mission. And so I got to be closely involved with the crew during their training leading up to the mission, involved with the scientists and the team of people that come up with the experiments that we're going to do, and then working with a great team of flight controllers to oversee that mission over about 4 months that I was in charge of. And so that was especially rewarding. It was a very successful mission. It was a great team of people to work with.
Hi, my name is Abby. What is your favorite part of your job?
I think for me it would be the preparing a plan, basically taking part in the preparation of a space flight from the very beginning. When someone says, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we do this or that? For example, an instrument that was just delivered to the space station is called Rapid Scat. It's a radar scatterometer. Again, it's another instrument that was built out at the Jet Propulsion Lab, or JPL, out in California. So I got to be involved with the planning to install that Rapid Scat on the outside of station. So the best part is when you're working with people that have a great idea to do some science, and then you help them figure out how to make that happen, how to get that up to the space station, how to get it installed right, and how to activate it, and how to get it running. And then you see the thing working, and Rapid Scat's working right now measuring ocean winds that helps us better predict hurricanes and better predict and understand the Earth's climate. So it's just great to take part from start to accomplishment of a project and work with work in a very challenging area, because space flight is the really most exciting thing about it is that it's the future. It's real exploration. So this is what we're preparing humans to leave the Earth and go out and live into space. So that's the part that I like the most, is taking part in that exploration and new scientific knowledge.
My name is Aiden Kansader, and my question is, have you ever been in a problem where the astronauts have been in danger?
Well, yes. Since I've been a flight director for about 7 years now, there's definitely been a few. I won't call them quite frightful, but definitely attention-getting moments in space. One of them that stands out is back in 2012, there was a piece of space debris that came uncomfortably close to the space station. And normally we get a warning about that from the Air Force, and they use radars and to track the debris and micrometeoroids that are up in space. And we have one of our folks here in Mission Control that monitors that and determines if anything is going to get too close to the space station. And in some cases we'll even do a collision avoidance burn to move the space station out of the way before that object comes zinging by our orbit. But in this case, back in I think March of 2012, we didn't get adequate warning. We did not have time to plan an evasive maneuver. So we had to tell the astronauts and had to get them to close all the hatches between the modules where they live, so that everything was airtight on the space station. And then they had to go into their Soyuz spacecraft and shut the hatches and stay in there and wait until this object passed by. And of course, anything, we're flying at 5 miles a second, and so is any object. So even something the size of a marble could do serious damage to the space station. So that was a little nerve-wracking, waiting for the clock to count down to 0. But fortunately, that object passed by probably within a couple hundred meters of the space station. But it didn't impact the space station, and we sent the crew back on their business.
All right. Well, Forest Lake, looks like we've got time for one final question.
Matthew, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Matthew, and how could we get involved with some student activities in our school?
I could not hear that question. If you could repeat that
a little bit louder.
Just talk loud.
How could we get involved with some student activities in our school?
All right, that's a great closing question, because I'll tell you a little story. I was inspired to take up a career in science and engineering when I watched the Apollo moon landings, but it was while I was in 5th grade. that I was talking with another fellow fifth grader, and he knew I was interested in aviation and space and science fiction, and he said, "Well, you ought to be an aerospace engineer." And I said, aerospace engineer? That's what I'll do, and that's the plan that I followed. So you can look where it got me. So you too can take the advice of a fifth grader to plan your future. So I would encourage you guys, if to find out the areas you're interested in, read books about them. If there's a school club, definitely get involved with that. You guys are at a technology magnet, so there's probably a math club. Math is the language of science and engineering, so you definitely want to learn all you can with math. If there's museums or parks in the area that have things that appeal to you, you can always go visit those. And of course, if your teacher or your parents know anybody that works at a hospital or at a factory where you're interested in what they're doing, ask the grown-ups. Grown-ups love talking about what they do, and would love sharing that with you guys. It's never too early for each of you to start thinking about what you want to do with your future.
That's a great question, and we really appreciate you guys. You're a good-looking bunch of students there in Columbia, South Carolina. We really appreciate you guys joining us and visiting with Chris for a while to find out about what NASA's all about and what we're doing, not only here for the International Space Station, but for the agency itself. And don't forget, you guys are the future of what we do in here, as Chris and I will be gone by the time you guys may be the ones that are heading out to Mars or beyond. So keep studying, and thanks for joining us today.
Wisdom knows what he said.
Thank